The best way to travel is through reading a book. Oh, that sounded really smart. I should put that on a t-shirt. Hi, I'm Lilly Singh, and I'm gonna give Marie Claire a peek into my personal library. Check it out. Welcome to Shelf Portrait. Clever name, very clever name. This is my topsy-turvy bookshelf. It is behind every Zoom meeting I do. It is definitely the topic of all small talk during the beginning of Zoom meetings. And yes, it does. Let me answer your question. Yes, it does make me feel anxious, but I like the way the books look. I have a range of books. I try to organize them by size. It doesn't always work out that way, but a lot of my favorite books are here by a lot of people I look up to. For example, my good friend Rupi Kaur. I have her books throughout the house because they're so aesthetically pleasing. So they're like books, but also art, which is very, very cool. I have lots of selects from my book club, Lilly's Library. We have the first select, Tell Me How to Be. The second select, Dava Shastri's Last Day. My good friend, Jay Shetty's book, I think is in multiple places around the house. That's a good thing about friends that write books. They send you 10 of them and I'm like, now you're a centerpiece. Congratulations. We go all the way down here. And this is where I have just like, ooh, this is a really, really rad book. Bad Guys, DreamWorks animation movie is coming out, and this is a book on the making of that movie because I play a character. So it's all the development of the animation, which is really, really cool. And then we just have some like cool picture books. My friend Inquisitive in the UK, illustrator, he's gonna get mad that I said that, illustrator, visual artist, very creative person, illustrated this book. It's bedtime stories, and it's super, super dope as well. I have so many friends that do cool things. Priyanka Chopra Jonas, of course, the memoir. I have a lot of things like this. And then my favorite books of all time. So this is a true story. In school, when I was younger, I would get in trouble. Questionable teaching, if you ask me. I would get in trouble because I would always be reading Sophie Kinsella's books, the Shopaholic series. I was obsessed with them, and the teacher would always be like, Lilly, stop reading and pay attention. I know, questionable teaching, but I love that entire series. I also have books kind of all over my house because I think books are really a way to express yourself. So on my coffee table, on my shelves around my house, pretty much in every nook and cranny, even the bathroom, there's books. One of the books that has impacted me the most out of any other book I've read is called The 4 Agreements. In fact, my first therapist told me to read this book. Yep, we're getting straight into therapy. That's right. It's been what, how many seconds? Well, my therapist said, you know, every time I would be in session, she said, I really want you to read this book called The 4 Agreements. And I really loved just how straightforward it was. And it changed the way I thought about a lot of things. In fact, when I wrote my latest book, I really tried to channel just the straightforwardness of this book because I thought, it said what it needed to say. It didn't say unnecessary things. It didn't try to be like, oh, I'm gonna use big words and I'm gonna make this sound artsy. They just said things the way things needed to be said, and I really, really admired that. So The 4 Agreements, definitely recommend it. The next book that I would really, really recommend is by my good friend, my sister from another mister, Rupi Kaur. She's just so talented. Words cannot even do justice to how talented she is. She has 2 books. This one is The Sun and Her Flowers. What I love about Rupi's books is I know, because I know her personally, I know how involved she is with her books. So not only are her poems amazing, and not only does she express things in a way where you're like, oh my God, this is how I felt, but I just could never put it into words. Like that, every page will be like, you are saying what's been in my soul all this time, and I never knew how to say it. But she also does the illustrations herself, and she also is very involved with picking the type of paper and the exact colors that she wants on the cover. So I appreciate that as an artist, she really is invested into every part of the book. I actually had the honor of launching her second book on stage with her and reading one of her poems, and it's just such a range. Some of them are sentimental, some of them are a little spicy, and some of them are vulnerable. And I think it's just such a powerful piece of work, especially as a South Asian woman. You know, there's a lot of things in her books that are taboo or things that we don't talk about enough, and I think it's a great step in the right direction. Next, we got Tell Me How to Be. So I started a book club called Lilly's Library, and the goal of Lilly's Library was to put a spotlight on South Asian authors and share South Asian stories with the world, because I feel often South Asian creators are not given the credit they deserve. And so I want to put them on a pedestal and show people that universally South Asian stories can be enjoyable and should be recognized. And this was the very first select of Lilly's library. It is by Neil Patel. It's called Tell Me How to Be. It follows a mother and a son as they expose their secrets, deal with some of their trauma, and ultimately bond together. It is funny, it is emotional, and again, I think just talks about so many things that we don't see enough of. You know, I think this book is what I wished we would see on screen. But it's right here in this book, and Neil's such a great writer. I literally read this in a day and a half because I could not put it down. Next is Think Like a Monk. Look at this handsome guy. This is my good friend Jay Shetty. One of the biggest blessings of my life is being friends with this man. So Jay used to be a monk. He was a monk for several years. And then he wrote this book with all the teachings he learned during that time. And he makes mindfulness so accessible. You know, these ideas that we think are so otherworldly and that we can't possibly do ourselves, he puts in this book and he takes you through his journey and he tells you stories and he gives you teachings, and this is just a life-changing book. And I always think about, when you think about things like life and what kind of person you want to be, you have to be careful who you take advice from. And Jay is someone where you can confidently take advice from him because he's lived the life. And when you spend any time with him, you can tell that he's such a well-rounded, balanced, just a healthy individual. Honestly, that's what it is. He's healthy. So healthy. He's just so healthy. You should listen to Jay. Think Like a Monk. The last book I'll give a shout out to is, oh, would you look at that? It's my new book. How did this get in here? Look at that foil. You see that foil? This shiny foil? Details. This is a small and short and sweet book. It is my second book called Be a Triangle. And this book, more than anything else I've ever done in my entire life, any TV show, any movie, any project, this book has helped me more than anything else I've ever done. This is a gift to myself, first and foremost, and I hope it can be a gift for other people. But triangles are the strongest shape structurally because they have a really strong foundation. You know, when you build on a square, it becomes a rectangle. It changes. When you build on a circle, it becomes an oval. It changes. When you build on a triangle, it just becomes a bigger, stronger version of itself. That is how I want to build my life. You know, especially during the pandemic, I learned that when everything went away, all my gigs, all my travels, all my hangs, all my events, it wasn't only that I was bored. It's quite sad to say, I felt like I had no value and no purpose, and I almost felt like I didn't exist as a human being. And I realized that's because I associate my value with all of those things, not giving myself the credit of being a full human being without those things. And I realized it's because I never did the work as a kid to figure out who I was, what I cared about, what my values were, and where I wanted to go in life. And so I never had that strong foundation. So Be a Triangle is all about building that foundation. I talk about 4 things: a relationship to yourself, a relationship with the universe, understanding distraction, and implementing design. And I got some really cool people I mentioned here. Rupi gives me a quote, Jay gives me a quote, Mindy Kaling, Calpin. They all say good things. So if you're interested, Be a Triangle. LillySinghBook.com is where you can get it. My favorite genre is definitely comedy. I love watching comedies on screen, and I think there's something really special about reading comedy as well, because I get to then make up a voice for this person, and I get to imagine what they look like when they're saying that funny thing. And so it allows for a lot of world building and scenario building in my mind that I think is really cool. The person I like discussing books with the most has actually turned out to be my mom. You know, which I never expected because me and my mom don't have similar reading tastes, and I'm not sure she has much time for reading, to be honest. She's really busy. But when I started Lilly's library, she started to follow along with the books I would recommend, and it's the first time ever my mom and I have bonded over books. You know, she would read this book on schedule, she would read this second select on schedule, and it's something that has really bonded us in a way that I didn't think was possible, which is really cool. I love going into bookstores because I love just the aesthetics of books. I love the environment of being surrounded by books. I think book reading is like a lifestyle. I just love being surrounded by literature. However, if I do not have time to go into a bookstore, then I will straight up just Amazon it because it comes to my door the next day. Hard copy or e-reader? Here's the thing. When it comes to books, I'm really old school. I like to hold a physical book and I like to physically turn pages. So I don't like reading on a tablet or Kindle. I really enjoy being able to hold a book and then just kind of see the touch and feel of it. And I think it's because of authors like Rupi that really want you to have a full experience of like how the paper feels and how the book feels in your hand. And so I prefer holding a real book. Generally speaking, I like to read before bed. You know, my nighttime routine is to make myself a cup of tea, lay in bed, and read a book, because I feel like after a day full of everything and work and noise, a book lets me escape into another world, and I can turn my brain off a little bit, and I can dive into someone else's journey, and I can, you know, just experience different characters. And then also it shuts my mind off in a really nice way, where then I can go to sleep, which is a rarity. And that's kind of a look into my world of books. I think more people should read, more people should dive into different worlds, and you know, not all of us have the privilege of traveling, especially during this time that we're living right now, but the best way to travel is through reading a book. And that's it. Thanks for watching Shelf Portrait, and don't forget, if you want to get a copy of my book, go to lillysinghbook.com, and don't forget to subscribe to Marie Claire. Bye!